Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to round 6 of season 1, 2024 of Endurance for Amateurs here at Fuji International Speedway, brought to you by Ninja Botanicals and AlienAwards.net. Coming up is a 90-minute race with GTD and GTP classes. Last week was a brutally tough race on the drivers at Willow Springs with off-track events galore. Nick Paletti got his first win of the season after Ryan Jeevan put his car in pole position for the first time as well. Now with one drop week accounted for in the standings, Nick Terrell is the leader of the GTP category after a second place last week, with Paul Skip just a single point back. GTDA was won for the fourth time this season by Ken Huber after a second pole position. As it stands, he has an 18-point advantage over Eric Bellata and 39 points over third place Travis Rowe. GTDB was won by James Foreman with a third place overall finish and now the fourth unique driver to win a race in GTDB across 5 races this season. Jesse Coffey is the leader of the class, with Foreman, Nathan Westland, and Andrew Hicks all within 15 points of the lead. I'm joined in the booth for the first time by the aforementioned Eric Bellata. Eric, this is an exciting, gigantic track that's never had a shortage of action and drama in the past. With this frankly humorously long straight that we have here, how important is top speed to car selection here tonight?
Oh, I think it's really important. It's actually surprising to see so many cars on the grid, at least in the GTD section, that are naturally aspirated, since the altitude does tend to play with that. So I think it's going to create a lot of action going down into turn 1, and coming out of that final corner, that your exit there is going to really mean a lot for getting track position on this track.
Yeah, right now we're getting the guys finishing their out lap, so they're about to start their first hot lap here, and we are running without that Dunlop chicane there at turn 10. So that's really the only difference from the main Grand Prix circuit that we're doing, which I am not going to complain about. It is not the greatest chicane in the world, and I think all the drivers are pretty happy to not have it as well.
Yeah, I could see some real jam ups in there, especially with the GTPs coming in so hot through it if it was on this layout. So it's probably better to skip it for today.
And that being said, that entire last section, as you can see on that track map there, it is very tight. So even with that chicane there in turn 10 being removed, as they make their way through Nets and Panasonic, it is going to be difficult for these GTPs to pick their way through traffic if they catch a big pack there at the end of the track. But that last corner in Panasonic does offer a lot of exciting possibilities with multiple racing lines that are viable through there.
Oh, certainly. And it's kind of deceptive because the track, it looks like it's very wide through there, right? But it's so easy to kind of get caught to one side or the other when you really need to transition over. It'll be really interesting to see how they navigate traffic through there, or if they're going to be more patient and wait to just get them on the straights.
Yeah, and that's a great point. There's absolutely no shortage of width on this track. It is extremely wide all over the place, but just with some of the geometries of the corners, it does start to tighten up. I mean, the track may be wide, but you just don't want to be out there.
Exactly. And then especially as the track changes and the race goes on and you've kind of got the marbles developing out there, it could really turn into a lack of grip and get very slippery very quickly.
Yeah, 90 minutes, and these drivers, for most of the season in the GT3s, they've been going with a one-stop strategy. They've been able to stretch it past that 45-minute mark. So tire wear is going to be something they're going to have to take care of. And a lot of these long corners, as you can see right now, on board with Adrian Vahil, are right-handers. So those left tires, just like we had last week at Willow Springs, are going to get a little bit extra beat up.
Turn 4 in particular just absolutely roasts your left front, at least for the GTDs anyway. So kind of managing your throttle and not pushing the car too much through that so you don't scrub those tires up will be pretty big there to just kind of survive to the end of your stint.
Early on here, Chris Thacker with the provisional pole position, I believe had the fastest time in practice as well. So a debut race for Chris Thacker here, fastest in practice, trying to be fastest on pole, but Keith Roycroft keeping him honest here, less than a tenth apart. We actually saw quite a lot of drivers within that 1 second mark of the fastest time as well. Despite being a minute and a half, it's been pretty close.
Yeah, it looks like right now the top 10 is really only, or I guess the top 7 is really only separated by about 5/10.
And Keith Roycroft,
so we should really see
with an improvement there to move his way to first.
And Ken jumping up into 6th. Ken Huber, I'm expecting to see him come a little further up. He's been incredibly quick and consistent so far this whole season.
Yeah, only 3/10 off, but yeah, down there in 6th. I think that I don't think he's qualified beyond like 2nd or 3rd place this season. It's been a stormer of a season so far for Ken Huber. So sixth would, I think, be the lowest qualifying on the season. Does not mean that he couldn't win the race. Of course, we've seen people win from way far back, but it might be a little bit extra of an ask. Paul Skip in the GTPs has taken first place now with his second timed lap, and he's now 3/10 ahead of Nick Paletti there.
Let's see where Nick's at on his next lap here. Looks like he just finished his.
Yeah, it looked like all yellow sectors there in that lap, so I think considering we didn't even see a time, and it may have been an invalidated lap there with some off tracks. I don't think that this should be too aggressive. Certainly not as much as last week with Willow Springs as far as off tracks. There's not as many places to escape, but there are places to kind of lose control of the car, especially as those tires heat up, especially in the latter half of the track.
Coca-Cola corner can really catch you out. It looks like you can go so quick through there, but if you're a little bit overzealous, you're going to go flying right off the track. So it's not in like a catastrophic way. It's not a crash, but you'll catch an off track there if you push a little too hard. And the Dunlop as well, even without the chicane, it's kind of got that little bump on the inside, that little curb, and that can kind of toss you out and dip a couple tires off the grass there on that side.
Yeah, we can see here on board as he's heading up to Coca-Cola corner. It's a completely blind apex because it does go over a little bit of a hill as they make their way downhill into 100R. And there's off-track galore there as far as plenty of runoff space to, like you said, not have a catastrophic incident. But it is a corner that can be a little bit dicey when those faster GTPs are coming up on that GT3 traffic and they think they can just make it there, not lose too much time through 100R. It can be a little stressful.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see where the GTPs are patient versus where they try and kind of push it and get aggressive to get around the GTDs. I know sometimes you really just can't wait. You kind of have to throw it in there, like kind of head it into Dunlop maybe, or the Daiichi corner. That's a big one. I'm imagining they can just outbrake the GTDs and get position really quickly so they can work their way through.
With a monster lap there from Chris Thacker, moving his way back to provisional pole position now with just 2 minutes remaining. Had two purple sectors there in that lap. It was a yellow third sector, but first two sectors fastest of anybody in the field, and now almost 3/10 over second place, which is basically the gap from second back to eighth.
He is absolutely flying right now, and the Audi is pretty tricky to drive around here because the rear likes to really kind of come around with some of these little elevation changes and gets a little unsettled in some of the corners that you have to trail brake through a little bit. So he's really got that thing dialed in.
And we saw a lot of people using that Audi at the start of the season and suffering some incidents, and the participation in that car has definitely dwindled over the weeks as some people are just finding it a little bit difficult. Meanwhile, there in the GTPs, Jay Smart moving his way to pole position. If he finishes this qualifying session here, this would be his first pole on the year.
He's been quick in the races. I've kind of noticed him, and he's always kind of fighting near the top. So it'd be really great to see him stick it on pole and see if he can kind of drive away from there.
Yeah, we especially saw him do well at another Japanese track a couple weeks ago in Okayama, where he got his one podium on the season, if I'm remembered correctly, and looking to do well here as well. I think Paul Skip is out of laps. Yeah, I think all the GTPs except for Nick Terrell are not out on track. So Nick Terrell, the only guy who could do it, but I don't know if he's actually putting in times right now. Jay Smart already with two purples in this lap as well. So even more of an improvement potentially to the 1/10 he's gotten Paul Skip.
He is flying.
Come through that final corner, Panasonic. You see it's uphill. It's tough to know really when to put on the gas because those curbs right there don't want to touch.
He looked like he got into him a little bit, but it didn't send him flying this time. Pretty much right on.
Yeah, you can get actual real air time on those curbs. A little bit of a slower S3 is it probably influenced by that last corner, but still an improvement by another couple tenths. He's got 3/10 on second place now as well, and 4 seconds remaining. It looks like these are going to be our 2 pole positions. So now with qualifying over, we're heading to this warm-up period. We're going to verify these results. We'll be back with you in just a couple minutes. All right, we are back, and here are our qualifying results.
Starting in first place on pole position tonight, we have Jay Smart. Next to him on the grid in second place will be Paul Skip. In third place, we have Nick Paletti. In fourth, John Kelly. In fifth, Ryan Jeevan. And I think Nick Terrell is going to be starting in sixth. Or do I have that backwards?
I think they are backwards. Neither one put a time in, and then they sort by I rating, which is...
Gotcha.
However that is as a tiebreaker. But Nick Terrell will be starting ahead of Ryan Jeevan here. Meanwhile, there for the GT3s, Chris Thacker on debut, going to be starting from pole. Keith Roycroft following him behind in second, with Travis Rowe and Ken Huber rounding out the top four. Following them, we have Paul Boyle, James Foreman, Tyler Langenberg, Jeff McDonald, Travis Bell, and Aaron Claybaugh for the top 10. Jack Lucas, Christopher Craig, Jesse Coffey, Adri Garcia, Rick Hughes, Greg Holland, Philip Ranieri, Richard Curry, James Repp, and Kevin Berquist. And finally, Zach Nurnberger, Roger Shank, Keith Williams, Dan Barnett, Leonardo Elijah, and Tony Watson, with some of these guys starting from the pits here in this race. Lisi Keith Roycroft, our second place qualifier, not starting from the line. So I don't know if that is a deliberate choice or something happened, but they're going to be waiting a long time for this green flag, as the no passing opportunity is going to be through turn 2. So as they head into Coca-Cola Corner, they will be allowed to make moves, but through Daiichi in turn 2, no passes allowed, as they will stay single file on this start. Pace car still waiting to come into the pits. Start line is quite a bit down this straight. Jay Smart on his first pole position of the season will be waiting for that to come out. As we see Jay trundling down the main straight. Gonna be waiting for that green flag. And that's the start finish line. Waiting on the green flag still, potentially.
Green flag, green flag.
There we go.
There we go.
And we're
Green flag has been waved, so they are going to be single file through this first turn. But we need to keep an eye on these gaps. And again, also, if Keith Roycroft is going to be rejoining this race or not through turn 1. Looking easy enough as they head down through turn 2, and the racing is now on for these GTPs. Jay Smart leading the pack, not being closely followed by anybody. Those GT3s being led by Chris Thacker. No incidents early on.
It's like everyone's just going to settle in and try to feel this track out before we start seeing too much action here. It's probably smart, because cold tires are really tough in the first lap or two around this track.
Yeah, especially for those GTP cars. And this is a long race, and there's a lot to mess up. But Jay Smart already pulling nearly a second on Paul Skip behind, which should aid him as they come down this straight. He's not going to have any bonus of, Nick Paletti nearly getting loose as they make their way through Dunlop. But lap is nearly finished, and there are some more of those curbs that you can't touch on this track.
Looks like something happened to Keith Roycroft here. Did he go off track?
Roycroft deciding to start from the pits in this race. But it does look like he has rejoined the race. Not sure what the decision was for him there, or if maybe there was something he didn't have set up correctly, but he never took that grid. But he is here in this race, so at least we'll be able to see that as he maybe makes his way through the field tonight. GT3's back here, still single file, no positions gained or lost, with the exception of Zach Nurnberger, who's passed Kevin Berquist. Let's see how this move was made. Nurnberger in the rainbow BMW, sending it down the inside in the nets, and a little bit of a lockup, but just enough overlap to make that move happen.
It's like Chris and Travis are starting to pull a little bit of a gap for themselves here as they head into turn 1 as well.
Travis Rowe qualifying in third place, but getting that second place with Keith Roycroft not taking the start. Rick Hughes has just made the move on Adri Garcia. Late move into Daiichi and a strong on the brakes. I don't think he even planned to make that pass happen.
Makes it stick on his way out as well.
Couple tight battles that we got all through the field between both classes still. Some of the stratification not happening quite yet. And John Kelly with an incident in those LMP or the GTPs. Let's see. It didn't appear on the incident tracker. Somewhere there in nets. I think probably just a little bit of a short oversteer moment as he made his way through that left-hander of turn 14.
Looks like a little lockup, maybe. Pushed his car around.
At least he's still out here on the
Yeah.
track. No damage to the car.
Rear came out from under him a little bit, but he managed to kind of keep it on track at least. He didn't kind of fly off.
Jeff McDonald just lost a spot to Travis Bell, trying to get it back. Nearly lost it to Aaron Claybaugh there as he was kind of bullied out to the outside through Panasonic. He's got it back, and now he's on the tail of Travis Bell to reclaim that 7th place spot. Heading down this straight, Jeff McDonald with the overspeed, but it just looks like it's petered out a little bit in the same car, so no advantage between the makes. Heading into turn 1, Daiichi, and it looks like Jeff McDonald's going to try to send it around the outside. Competitive by both guys. I still think they're going to be side by side as they head into Coca-Cola.
That was clean and respectful racing through there. They kept a nice bit of a gap between each other and made sure they made it through.
I think Travis Bell backing out of that one just a little bit, being on the outside of Coca-Cola is not going to head in the spin. Oh, and a save.
What a save.
A collision that turned.
Yeah,
a collision that turned into a second collision that saved Jeff McDonald's race as he only loses one spot from that incident, just falling behind Aaron Claybaugh.
Doesn't look like he has any damage either, I don't think. So he should be able to recover his pace here too.
So we see that incident again. A little bit of net code, I think, being involved there, but lucky that he gets to keep going straight.
Hey, they didn't get glued together. Sometimes that happens and it could ruin it for both of them on the spot. So at least they made it through.
This whole field right behind that group, it's just continuing to bunch up all the way back from 7th to 15th, all basically within 3/10 of each other, still here on lap 4.
It's going to be a lot of really close racing here in the middle of the pack, I think.
Meanwhile, in the GTPs, Jay Smart still holding his lead, hasn't really extended beyond what he got in that first lap. But Paul Skip still trying to chase him down. It does look like there's been a little bit of a stratification between Smart, Skip, and Paletti, and then the other 3 GTPs in Terrell, Jeevan, and Kelly. But they are quickly coming up to the back of that GT3 field.
Those top 3 are managing to stay within about a second of each other, so they can't really... They're kind of keeping draft for this long straight. It's kind of keeping them together through the infield, I think.
Yeah, they're not too close to be threatening each other, but certainly close enough to be getting that benefit from the draft. And these GTPs do have a much larger benefit from the draft effect than the GT3 cars do. So it does help them a lot more as they're making their way through this race. We've seen some overtakes being made by saving some fuel through an entire stint using that draft. Jason Coffey, Rick Hughes.
For P18.
Rick Hughes losing that position after gaining it and then having to give it back again. Meanwhile, Zach Nuremberger here trying to catch up to James Repp, has just a few tenths to get to him, and with a long train here, it's not quite a DRS train with no DRS in these cars, but it definitely can form a bit of a draft train as everybody's getting the same amount of benefit from the guy in front of them.
Looks like we're starting to really see the middle of the pack for the GTDs heat up. There's a lot of passing back and forth now.
Adrian Garcia, you heard the tire spin. That is Richard Curry, I believe, that spun past that as well. So there may have been a little bit of a tap there in Panasonic corner. Take a look what action happened there. On board with Adrian Garcia into Panasonic.
Looks like he just gets into the side there and it kind of turns him around.
Let's take another look from another angle here. I think he just got closed up on a little bit by the car in front. I think had enough of an overlap to deserve some space, but there at the apex doesn't look like any major damage, but a couple guys having to go off track to avoid that incident there.
It's like Richard Curry into turn 1 as well. Got into it with Zach Nuremberger.
Let's see this incident. I think it may have been James Repp. Well, let's see. Zach Nuremberger there on the far right.
And they were way down trying to defend on that one, too.
So James Rep, that unfortunate Mercedes getting involved in that incident, just a little bit of a crinkle to that front bumper. But I think maybe just a little bit of a too heavy defense on that interior this early into the race, but still everyone getting away with it. But unfortunately racking up those very important incident points. And there's some airtime. There's some airtime by James Rep. We just talked about those curbs getting you in the air, and I'd be shocked if he doesn't have a little bit of damage to that car just from that landing.
He absolutely took off on that one.
Yeah, you can have a truly race-ending incident from that. A little bit of squeezing and some more airtime, and that's Roger Shank in the air as Jay Smart, the leader of the GTPs, makes his way through. Lucky to avoid that. Actually went outside of those curbs there. Roger Shank, is his car still functioning? He's actually driving it, so the car's not completely destroyed, but he's able to make it into the pits. Certainly going to be using a fast repair here, but that's exactly the kind of airtime we were talking about can happen from those curbs, and just a little bit of crowding, nowhere for him to go. Just a tough spot for him to be in with that GTP already on his outside.
It's like driving over a landmine, and when you're sandwiched in there, you really have kind of nowhere to go. You're just sort of at the mercy of wherever the thing's going to shoot you off to. Really good avoidance from Jay Smart to get around the outside there. It's okay to take that off track just to survive and keep your race going.
Yeah, and then what that has done is brought Paul Skip now just into 0.3 range of Jay Smart, with Nicholas Paletti starting to fall back. A spun car. That's James Rep there, and another car on the outside of that corner. I think Keith Williams involved there in Net's corner. Let's see what happens. James Rep in the Mercedes, the white Mercedes. Bit of an awkward collision there. I'm not sure. It seemed like they were aware of each other heading into the corner, so I'm not sure what happened in that incident there. But Rep and Keith Williams both finding themselves backwards there in Nets. And another car backwards, that was Richard Curry. Nets is going to continue to be an issue for drivers even without touching each other. It's just a tough corner.
It kind of destabilizes the rear of the car a little bit. You have to be really careful with your throttle application, or it'll come back around. Very, very tricky to drive, especially when you're in close, and if you're side by side, there's not a lot of grip off the racing line there.
This battle we're seeing right now is Keith Roycroft, Dan Barnett, and Tony Watson all fighting for that 18th place spot currently. Tony Watson with a bit of an advantage, stronger on the brakes initially by Barnett, deeper by Tony Watson, and it looks like he's going to be able to maintain that place as Keith Roycroft slips on by right behind him.
That's a clean overtake into turn one there. That was nice.
Yeah, Roycroft gaining some spots, obviously, from where he started at the absolute back of the field, not taking the grid, qualified in second place, but has been making his way from the back since that point.
Yeah, he's picked up 6 positions already. He's really starting to move his way through the field.
And it looks like Tony Watson's not too long away from getting that move made on him as well. Keith Roycroft, very, very fast driver, so absolutely see it being capable for him over this 90 minutes to really get into a pretty competitive position at the end.
He was really quick in practice and qualifying. It's kind of interesting. It's like he's doing a last to first challenge or something here. Pretty good. Pretty fun to watch.
Lingenberg letting Nick Paletti by as he's trying to make the move on James Foreman for 5th overall. James Foreman in that B class, and Chris Thacker was provisionally to start this race, but with his qualifying performance, that left James Foreman with pole position for the Bs. But remember, every position counts, so Foreman still is going to want to hold that 5th place overall, but they are not on the same group as far as point scoring across the entire season. As Nick Terrell moves his way around, conveniently getting past him before getting to Coca-Cola.
And it's good to get that done before you make it to that corner. It's really hard to dive through there. There's really not. It looks like there's a lot of space through that corner, but you really need to kind of get really close to the inside there and kind of hug the kind of little post that's sticking up on the inside of the corner. Otherwise, it really kind of ruins your whole exit and it gives you a bad setup for 100R. So it's good you can make it through there clean ahead of the corner.
Nick Paletti here has very noticeably caught up to Paul Skip in this race. They've just now finally got through the entire field of GT3s, and while just a not even half a lap ago, it seemed like he was a second and a half back. He's now brought that down to sub half a second, really nailing that last bit of traffic. And now in the open air, interesting to see what these guys will do so close to each other.
Yeah, the push and pull off of these three has been really interesting. They kind of drop back or get closer to the traffic, but at the end of the day, they seem to come right back to where they were. They're really hard to separate right now.
And we've seen all three of these guys lead laps of the season. Jay Smart had 8 laps coming into this race and has led every lap of this race so far. Paul Skip obviously has won a good handful of races and is second in the overall standings. Nick Terrell, again, our leader in the standings, but currently back there in 4th. Will provisionally lose that lead if this is where it ends. But, I mean, that's a lot to say. We're only 13 minutes into this race. There is a massive amount of stuff still to happen.
A lot of racing still to go.
This mid-pack here in the GT3s, still a tight battle. Christopher Craig here heading the back of this fight for 9th place, which Aaron Claybach currently has. But he's got Lucas, Coffey, and Craig all vying for that spot right now.
It looks like a little bit of the action has calmed down. They're kind of following along now. There's not as much side to side. I think they may just try to feel it back out after what was quite a bit of chaos there for a lap or two.
There's the move made by Keith Roycroft, and looked like Tony Watson helping him out a little bit there. Obviously, not really battling each other for position as it currently is. As I'm sure they're all aware that Roycroft was up there in the qualifying and just decided to start from the back. Nürnberger also one of the guys who has gained the most positions in this race. He's up 6 spots, half a second away from Philip Ranieri, with Ranieri going a little bit wide, dipping into that grass. Which even if you don't slow yourself down on that grass, there's a lot of bumps there to take you out of this race. But Nürnberger going to try to make this move probably down the straight to make that 7 positions gained on the race so far.
This will be interesting down the front straight because the Mercedes is usually an absolute bullet in a straight line. The BMW is no slouch either, but at the altitude, you think the BMW should get him there.
That just looked absolutely fantastic, perfect as he made his way through that final corner. I think he nailed that, and you can see the overspeed and that draft starting to help. Is the move going to be able to be made into turn 1? He's going to have to be good on the brakes here.
Oh, was that a little bump?
Hopefully he didn't touch him, sending them forward. It's way deeper on the brakes by Zach Nürnberger. He's obviously going to be taking this spot here. Not too much of a fight from Philip Ranieri, but I don't think Nürnberger had any other plans other than that happening there.
Strong on the brakes to make that stick through there, too. It looked like he came in a little hot, but he got the car rotated and came around well.
Also had this battle while that was happening between Jeff McDonald and Travis Bell just up the road from these guys into turn 1. And currently, Bell leading, Jeff McDonald retaking that spot a little bit as he takes the interior. And Travis Bell trying to fight back, but it looks like he just doesn't have the momentum as they come down to the Coca-Cola.
These two look like they have a really good battle developing amongst themselves, and they look like they're a little bit isolated from the cars in front of and behind them. So this could be a real race of pride for the two of them tonight. It'll be a great battle to keep track of.
Yeah, it does seem like they've started to drop a little bit off of Tyler Langenberg, who himself is trying to get that spot still from James Foreman, but has been unable to do so. But these two, not too much of a threat behind them and falling away from the drivers in front. So this may be a good duo that we see throughout this race. We saw a couple duos last week with some long race kind of battles. And Keith Roycroft and Rick Hughes fighting back and forth for position. Keith Roycroft temporarily had position through the inside of nets there, losing out again as they come through the exit, but trying to get that spot.
Some of these corners are really tough because it looks like you're going to make them stick and keep your momentum, but if you're just a little too quick through, you kind of have to back out on your exit, and they can kind of come back around you right after the corner. It's a little bit deceptive sometimes.
There's Jack Lucas using that overspeed with that Mercedes, and yeah, it does look, I mean, that move right there was, I think, of the drivers that we've seen, use that draft down the straight, the Mercedes seems to be the one that gets the most nose ahead as they make their way into that braking zone.
It'll be really interesting to see when they're on lower fuel exactly how far they want to push that braking zone and try and fight for position in there as well. It's one of the biggest straights in all of racing, so they're carrying so much speed as they come down into turn 1 there, and that's all the way down into, for the GTDs, it should be down into first gear for most, if not all of them. I don't think any of them are holding second through it. So it's really heavy braking.
And I mean, they obviously have the anti-lock brakes, but you don't want to be triggering that too much. It's not the fastest way to get that car slowed down. So there may be driver aids in these cars, but it doesn't mean it's easy to drive them fast.
Might stop you from crashing, but using them is often not the fastest way around the track.
And obviously with this track, like we said, wall's very far away, so we have not seen any wrecks with the wall so far. I don't think that we have anybody out of the race, even though we have had a couple very minor collisions between drivers. I think everybody's still in this race, which is great to see.
Yeah, a couple trips down the pits. I think that was really more than anything for hitting some of those sausage curbs there, or anti-cuts. They are very unforgiving. But yeah, just a fast repair gets you right back out onto the track and going. So everyone's still in it.
Aaron Claybaugh here just lost that spot last lap to Jack Lucas, and now losing another spot to Jesse Coffey here. So a little bit of a backslide here, and it looks like he's being pretty heavily threatened from Christopher Craig behind, both in the same car in that Porsche.
I wonder, did Aaron have an incident that maybe damaged his car? He's looks like he's dropped a couple positions there.
He went out wide, at least in Daiichi. Him losing that spot to last lap seemed like a normal event, but yeah, going too deep there in Daiichi, trying to avoid the sand and gravel out there, and losing the spot. So that's where he lost that momentum and why Christopher Craig was all over the back of him. But drivers doing a lot of risks as they head through there in Dunlop Corner, and he's trying to make a move as they make their way in the nets. Not a typical passing opportunity, but making it happen regardless. Maybe he's on the outside, though. This is going to be tough to stick it around out here.
For a second, it looked like we might end up 3 wide.
And a spin by Jesse Coffey. I can tell you exactly what happened there. The geometry of that corner on the inside is a little bit tougher. It's a little bit more prone to spin your car, and I think just wasn't aware that cranking on that wheel was going to do that. It's a tough corner on the inside.
It kind of picks the rear of the car up in a way that it doesn't seem obvious that it would do when you're kind of in the driver's seat of it. You have to be very careful with the throttle there, or the rear will come right around.
Yeah, no collision at all with the other drivers around him, just a little bit too fast, and unfortunately just in the worst possible spot to try to get himself turned around. Even touched that wall, hopefully no damage. So we saw Jay Smart fly by there, and it's another thing to keep track of, as the gap is coming down right as I say it, but Jay Smart able to have a little bit more of an impact during this traffic event than Paul Skip, as the gap before they got to this was about 0.6, and that has now grown to over 1 second between the two drivers.
And as they make their way through traffic, it'll be interesting to see if they end up right next to each other again once they come all the way through it. See them starting to work their way through now as they come down the straight.
And so far seems, from what we've seen here on the screen, very deft handling of the traffic for Jay Smart. Paul Skip has always been known for being able to do that quite well. But no, neither driver seems to be getting too held up in any parts. But here is the tough section of the track when it comes to that GT3 traffic, because he's going to try to go on the inside. Smart decision to not try to swing it out wide, and Aaron Claybaugh helping him through there.
Yeah, that's really tricky, especially if the GTD comes in a little hot there. They're going to push so far out. So if you try to come around the outside, you may end up with the GTD in front of you, kind of out of nowhere.
And Huber charging all the way up from his spot up into maybe second, back down to third, up to second, and it looks like he's got the advantage. He's got the inside. Very tough to make it happen on the outside of that corner. Once Ken Huber had secured that inside, it was just kind of a given that he was going to be able to take that spot.
Yeah, I don't think you want to fight that too much this early in the race. If Travis Rowe could kind of follow Ken through this and stay in his draft, it might just kind of help pull them both back up towards Chris Thacker here, and then maybe we can get kind of the top 3 all together.
Yeah, it's something that these drivers, I think, are going to have to keep in mind, too, when they come to the end of the race, because taking that inside, it is really definitely into turn 1 at least. It is the answer to making that move happen. Really hard to try to fight on the outside. So these guys using this early bit of the race to maybe evaluate what moves they can make at the end.
Yeah, there's a lot of kind of clever overtaking opportunities on this track. There's also a lot of spots that look like they could be good for overtaking that go horribly wrong, especially through section 3. So kind of feeling things out, kind of trying to get to grips with how the car behaves on certain parts of the track as you move through it. Turn 1 is obviously a big one, as you said.
Yeah, just 22 minutes into this race, and you can see Chris Thacker just barely down the road. I mean, we're looking from the perspective of third place, and first place already starting to run away with this. Still a lot to go and some strategy to play out as Jay Smart makes his way through, meaning that he's got through all but one driver for his second lapping event, and it's been a perfect start for both of those guys so far.
Yeah, both leaders look like they're starting to pull away a bit now. As traffic continues to develop and we get into the pit stops, we'll see if they kind of get closer back together.
And we don't have a lot of gigantic gaps in that GT3 field, but we are actually starting to get some that are growing to that 1 or 2 second. You kind of would think they'd be a little bit closer given that straight. You'd think the draft would pull them together, pull them closer, but I think that these are actually larger gaps than we saw around this time frame last week at Willow Springs.
Oh yeah, Willow Springs was really tough to really kind of pull away from anybody on, just the nature of that track and how it kind of flows, and it's all so fast. There's maybe one really heavy braking zone throughout the whole track, so as long as you can kind of keep a draft with people there, it's really hard to break away. Someone has to really make a mistake in order for you to create a gap with them.
Here's Paul Boyle, and we've got on board, and he's currently 16th place in the standings, which I think we can all agree is not indicative of his pace. He's one of the fastest drivers out there. I just think some of the races haven't gone his way, but so far, this has been one of his best races on the season. Currently in 4th, vying potentially to get up there into 3rd even second. That's second place right there.
He's really flying right now. It looks like he's starting to really kind of catch up to Travis and Ken here. We'll see if he can get something done with it. He was fantastic last week at Willow Springs. Paul and I actually had a great battle pretty much the whole race. We were pretty tied together. A couple of times I think he thought he separated from me and vice versa, and we always kind of found our way back to each other.
Yeah, that is I was gonna say that would be one quality that is absolutely true about Paul Boyle. He's certainly capable. Oh, and a spin for Travis Rowe in front, able to avoid that collision. Smart reactions there for Paul. I don't know if there maybe was a little bit of a touch between Rowe and Kuber into that corner. Let's take a look. It's hard to find because he didn't actually go off track, so I think he's just losing it. And like you said, it can be a little difficult there because of that bump on the top of that hill.
And especially once the rear of the Porsche starts to come around on these higher speed corners like this, it is very, very hard to save. There's so much weight over the back axle there that once it goes, it's kind of going on you. It's very hard to steer out of. You can see him trying. You can see the wheels trying to point down track.
Keith Roycroft with unfortunate collision with, I believe, Kevin Berquist, who was rejoining after an incident himself there in Coca-Cola Corner. I don't think Kevin really did anything wrong there.
Yeah, I think he just kind of misjudged the speed and got up into the back of him a little bit. That's unfortunate.
But to finish the thought, I was going to say Paul Boyle absolutely capable of having a intense battle that lasts the entirety of the race. And I mean, maybe he won't consider it, but never breaking a sweat. He's an ice cold guy. So I think that he's unfortunately lost that close battle that he's got now. He's got to catch up 3 seconds to Ken, who obviously didn't lose any time in that Travis Rowe incident that happened behind him.
And with
Jeff McDonald here is trying to keep up with Travis Rowe and James Foreman. So Rowe able to recover to a decent position still, only down 3 from where he started. Really 4 because of the pit lane start from Keith Roycroft. So in 6th place currently, but trying to get his bearings about him again as Jeff McDonald comes up on this field. And I know Jeff McDonald has had some pretty banger races here as well. It's been a strong track for him in the past, and he's showing out here today with 7th place and trying to get even higher. Meanwhile, further back in the field, Adri Garcia We saw, I think, him have an incident earlier in this race. That's why he's lost some spots, but he's climbing back. He's trying to get up on Rick Hughes, who we've also seen involved in a couple incidents earlier in this race. So a couple guys trying to recover early. Tony Watson there in the background, who's up 8 spots. I believe that is tied for the most spots gained in the race with Zach Nurnberger, who up in 13th, not too far away from moving his way into that top 10.
It looks like he's catching up to Greg Holland here as well, so he may have another battle on his hands shortly.
It's been a good race for Nurnberger so far. Now Rick Hughes has had an incident, as we just were watching that there. Just a bit of a tap as they headed through a Panasonic, and taking him out, it was such a minor contact to kind of spin him like a top there, I guess, just given the geometry of that corner.
These cars get so sensitive sometimes. It looks like the smallest of taps, but if the car's already unsettled, it's going to come all the way around.
Battle for fourth, still running hot here as Langenberg made that move on Foreman a while ago, but hasn't really been able to shake him since he got in front, and they have a pretty sizable gap to Paul Boyle in front of that, so no draft assistance or anything for Langenberg, but still defending well, because I don't think it's been any moves made on him. Is Jeff McDonald thinking about a move? That is not a average passing opportunity, but maybe just doing a little bit of scare tactics to Travis Rowe in front.
Sometimes you just have to fill those mirrors up and see if the guy in front of you makes a mistake.
Jeff McDonald still trying to make that move happen on Travis. Seeing if it's going to be able to be done down the straight in the same car here of that Porsche. You can see where he starts to catch up, and then he's going to pull out, and it just really stalls so fast, so he's going to have to beat him on the brakes in a Daiichi. Yeah, I don't think Rowe... Oh, too deep, actually, maybe. Yeah, Rowe happy to let him go by. Nice move by Travis Rowe to defend there.
Looks like he just came in a little too hot and couldn't hold his brakes there. Almost had him. Let's see if he can reload and try again next lap.
And Rowe still able to make his way through that corner quickly, as they actually both caught up to James Foreman just a little bit there in that corner.
Tyler Langenberg not too far ahead of James Foreman either, so this could turn into a 4-car battle pretty quick.
Yeah, hopefully no incidents. I feel like every time on the broadcast we bring up the potential of a good multi-car battle, something happens and it ends up getting broken apart. I hope to see this one last through this entire race, but we're actually, believe it or not, already 30 minutes into this event. So 1/3 of the way through, the GTP's probably starting to think about when they want to come into the pits here. And maybe now wouldn't even be a horrible time, because they're just now getting through the brunt of that GT3 field. Smart now up behind, I think, Zach Nurnberger, so up through the first half of the GT3 field, but then it starts to get really dense after that point.
Yeah, there's some big bunches of cars here in the middle of the pack for the GTDs, and that can be a little bit tricky for these prototypes to work their way through if they can't catch them on the straight or one of the faster sweeping corners. So it might be a good time to pit, just avoid that traffic for a bit.
We had a off track for it. We just saw the pass that Garcia made on Berquist, and then this just happened right now, a spin in Net's corner, giving that spot back to Kevin Berquist over Adri Garcia.
The back of that Ferrari really likes to come around in nets. You have to be so careful with it.
Yeah, really any car I've found to be pretty difficult through that section. It just lifts up so much, especially if you're trying to nail that apex. That there's two tough parts about it as they make their way through hairpin here, and they're going to be coming up to nets somewhat soon. You got the heavy elevation on the inside, really unsettling the suspension of the car, and then on the outside you got those curbs that can absolutely ruin your race if you hit them too hard.
So far, it looks like most people have managed to avoid those curbs, and they really are like driving over a landmine. So it's anything you can do to keep off them is going to help your race immensely.
Yeah, we saw a couple incidents early in the race, but I think really just nearly getting into that one there for Travis Rowe. But we saw a couple incidents early in this race, mostly just due to some crowding and a spin right there behind That was Keith Roycroft. So yeah, that was him on a different lap there because of that wreck that we saw earlier in Coca-Cola. Hard to tell what the cause of that was. That really came quite early in the corner from where we've seen most of the incidents happen there in Nets.
Yeah, that was interesting. Just lost the rear, it looked like, but I'm not sure what caused the car to come unsettled. Maybe a little too hard on the brakes. It's definitely a corner that requires a lot of finesse all the time, and it's so easy to, especially in a longer race like this, it is so easy to kind of just check out for a second mentally or kind of blank it. Next thing you know, you're kind of mashing the brake to try to fix your speed when you miss the braking point a little bit, and that's a very punishing section for something like that. Hopefully he can recover well.
Couple tough corners there for Dan Barnett. Nearly got onto those curbs and then seemed like he went wide on Panasonic. I don't know if he has still enough momentum to defend here from Elijah. He's got a little bit of damage to the back of that car, I think, in the rear right. I can't quite tell.
Elijah's coming down the inside here. Hard on the brakes.
Parking on the apex.
Hey, parked it in front and came out ahead. It's an overtake.
Yeah, good move by Elijah there. I think he saw that Dan Barnett was eyeing that switchback, and parking it on the apex there prevented him from being able to do it. So good driving by both drivers, and a nice move by Elijah. Barnett will have that opportunity to try to get him back if he follows close enough through this lap. Travis Rowe here is trying to get the spot on Jeff McDonald. This is for 6th place down the straight. Gap's starting to increase a little bit throughout the entire field. Chris Thacker continues to pull away at first in the GT3s, now up to 6 seconds. And Jay Smart with a little bit more time pulled out on Paul Skip behind to about a 5-second lead as we're edging closer to the pit window opening for those GTP cars.
Looks like Travis is really trying to take up those mirrors there and see if he can force a mistake just through pressure. He's really trying to stay close and trying to stay visible. These two have been back and forth all race so far.
And Travis Rowe, obviously we saw him have that incident in Coca-Cola, but he's recovered well, not letting it phase him too much in this race, and putting in still a strong performance here. Was able to start the race there on that front row, basically, as the second place driver. But back to 7th well, I think it could have been a lot worse. It was a great recovery as far as us. I think some people would let it get to their heads a little bit more.
He looks like he's settled back in well here. Since then, he hasn't really had any other mistakes, so he looks like he's starting to get his race back together. And it is, to your point, it is so easy, especially in kind of just a corner you would expect not to really have much of an issue. It's really easy to kind of let that mistake freak you out, but he looks like he's refocused. He's definitely pressuring Jeff McDonald in front of him. He's going to start to move his way forward again.
John Kelly with some exciting wheeling there. We caught him just as he was trying to make the move into Nets. Wasn't able to quite make it happen. Seemed like he had better speed despite taking that inside line, but then getting stymied by the GT3 traffic and having to back out. So still looking to make that move on Ryan Jeevan ahead, but that was some pretty fun driving for him there, and a lockup for Jeevan, making it even tougher on himself into Daiichi. And the Coca-Cola is still hounding them behind. Ryan Jeevan defending to the best he can as they're making their way through some traffic. Travis Bell now the next driver they make their way past.
Jeevan did well to save that. It looked like he was going to hang a wheel off into the grass there. That could have been very tricky for him, but he managed to keep it on the curb and get himself around the traffic.
Making their way through Dunlop and into Ness Corner. So this is where we saw John Kelly almost make that move. Was assisted a little bit from the traffic, but now this time no traffic immediately next to them. Let's see if he's able to get enough momentum to make that move down the main straight. And one of the longest straights in motorsports.
He could focus on his exit here. He could absolutely get right into the back of Ryan Jeevan here and really push him into Daichi.
Jeevan able to snatch a little bit of draft from those 3 GT3s that are still locked in a pretty tough fight, Foreman, McDonald, and Rowe. But it's not enough in that exit for John Kelly to make the move here on this lap. So Jeevan was direly threatened there last lap, but or the previous lap, but this last lap was really strong and composed. Incident maybe for James Rep here through 100R. Now coming into the hairpin. I think maybe he caught that grass out there on the outside. Not something we've seen too many people do, but I think as the race goes on, people get a little bit comfortable. As you said, it's a very flow-based track, so you have to not focus too much on the details, and you just have to get into the zone and get into the rhythm of it. But that can mean that certain little things like that catch you off guard.
Yeah, that was really unfortunate for James Rep. He's trying to make the track as big as possible, hang a couple of wheels out onto those curbs so he can get the best angle to go through the corner. And on my screen, it looked like maybe he touched one blade of grass and it sent him around. That was unlucky.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't even look like he touched the grass. That's just the only thing I can think that happened. Zach Nuremberger, one of the drivers who was trying to get another spot here, has been up 8 for a while here. Caught up to Greg Holland, and it looks like he's kind of stuck around the 1.5 second mark since then. But most gaps in this field growing to a good amount larger than that. We're seeing a lot of 6 second, kind of gaps throughout this entire field, at the top, in the midfield, and in the back as well.
Looks like battle for fourth, really. Tyler Langenberg, James Foreman, Jeff McDonald, and Travis Rowe, they're all still very close to each other.
Oh, and I think that something's about to happen right now. Jeff McDonald trying to make the move on James Foreman. It looked like he was so close, just hundredths away. He's on the outside now. And is he going to try the inside? He's going to back out for just about now as they come through Dunlop into the Nets complex. And we saw Aaron Clayball make the move in here.
Let's see. And looks like he holds it.
And he's got it. So James Foreman pulling back inside, able to still keep Travis Rowe from making it happen. But Travis Rowe now trying to go to the inside. This is going to be the outside of Panasonic, but there's many different corners or lines you can take through this corner. Travis Rowe going to take the outside one, avoiding those curbs.
He got a good exit. Travis Rowe got a really good exit out of there. He was so close to those curbs, but he managed to avoid them, and it let him push forward. This BMW in a straight line, though, is very quick. It looks like he's got a little side draft coming that might help him through. Oh, he's chosen to fall back.
Foreman, I don't think, really even made a mistake on that lap, but losing 2 positions there. Still the first place of the GT3B drivers. And he's the guy who's currently in second place. He's 8 points back on Jesse Coffey. And Jesse Coffey is currently back in 18th. So if this finishes as it is, James Foreman will be able to come out of today's race as the leader of the class. Jack Nuremberger, I just talked about how he had kind of stayed at the second half. He is now, since I said that, I think he heard me, the opposite of the commentator curse, cut that gap down by an entire second. You can see there that Holland was 9/10 slower on that previous lap, and it is now absolutely within attacking range of Zach Nuremberger trying to get into that 12th place spot. Jesse Coffey just made the move on Dan Barnett. Let's take a look at a replay of what happened there. Into turn 1, just too deep for Barnett getting into that runoff. That's not quite the sand yet there, but it is a material meant to slow down the car, and obviously going out wide is already going to slow you down enough. Rowe continues to chase down Jeff McDonald, but James Foreman falling a little bit back from these two. Defended from him for a really long time. I just wonder if maybe took a little bit too much life out of those tires, as they still got another 8 minutes to go before they hit that halfway point and can dump them for a fresh set. Oh, and as I look away, Zach Nuremberger made the move.
Oh.
Standard pass that we've seen into turn one. Paul Skip in second place for those GTPs, picking his way through those guys, and still has that 5-second gap to Jay Smart in the lead.
Yeah, looks like the traffic has started to separate the top of the GTP pack here a little bit.
And they're going to be happy that a lot of the GT3s are starting to spread out a little bit more, because when you got those cars that are 3 seconds apart, it allows you to handle it one at a time rather than having to pick a spot where you get through the entire field, that entire group.
Absolutely, being able to dip in and out of the traffic and be a little bit patient around a corner versus feeling like you have to overtake a whole train of cars at once, otherwise you're going to cause an incident, or you have to wait behind the entire set of them. It makes it a little easier for the GTPs.
Speaking of waiting, you can see Nick Paletti's pain as he was able to get past Greg Holland through Dunlop and then couldn't quite make it happen for Zach Nuremberger there in before they got to nets, and he just lost so much time there, even went wide, earned himself an off track, and luckily no damage to the car. But I think the craziest thing that I just saw was I just noticed there Chris Thacker, just his last lap that he just put in was the fastest lap of the race for the GT3s. They got 44 minutes of tire wear on these cars, which these tires don't last as long as they did a year and a half ago on the previous model, and he just did the fastest lap nearly halfway into the race.
He is flying off the front here, and these cars, the tires are worn out, but they're a lot lighter now that they've burned so much of their fuel off, and that can really help through some of the more momentum heavy corners and also the tighter corners, and just accelerating out of them, being able to brake a little bit later. It looks like it's really suiting the cars as they kind of get lighter here.
And like I said, especially interesting to see him in the Audi, which just so many people have kind of gone away from using. Meanwhile, Greg Holland had an incident.
The Audi was very much the shiny new toy, I think, at the beginning of the season, so it was very fun to get involved with. But I think we're seeing a lot of drivers kind of come back to the cars that they're more comfortable with overall.
Yeah, this is the newest car added, and just seems to have some quirks that I think a lot of drivers run into issues with. But I mean, we haven't seen a single step put wrong for Chris Thacker so far. Meanwhile, in the news for the GTPs, Jay Smart has come in for his pit stop, and he's really not that far off that halfway point. But Nick Paletti coming in as well. It looks like the GTP's just a little bit shy of being able to actually make this a one-stop race. John Kelly here to attack Ryan Jeevan again. The battle had cooled down a little bit, but are they coming into the pits? Ryan Jeevan looks like he's signaling he's doing that. Yes, both cars coming into the pits. And it hits the wall. Ryan Jeevan hitting the wall in the pit entry. Like he's got a fast
That's one way to get the car slowed down.
So yeah, with that fast repair, shouldn't be anything of too much importance there, that incident, but lucky to not just have the car stopped right there and having to tow it, or John Kelly getting involved there as well. Taking tires, obviously, for these guys. They will have a splash and dash at the very, very end. Or at least if they so choose. They may split this last stint up to a little bit more equally lengthed parts, but if not, they're going to be pitting with, only like 8 minutes to go in this race.
It'll be an interesting second stop. It's really not long enough to take tires on. You really just want to pick up a little bit of fuel and then run it hard towards the end.
You see Jeff McDonald here, and he's showing an example of just how tough it is on those tires right when you come out of the pits. McDonald's already come in for his pit stop, and he is a good amount short of that halfway point. I don't know if all the rest of the drivers are going to be in that same situation, but regardless, You can see he's struggling to stay ahead here of Dan Barnett just through all of these corners, continuing to lose time, and they're just not at their peak as soon as you put them on the car.
This track is so demanding on the tires. It really, really works them hard. And when they're cold, they're so hard to hook up. You really have to ease them in there and work the temperature into them. If you snap and cause a lot of tire spin or something, it can quickly run your tires foul, and it takes quite a while to get them to come back. So smart on him for taking an easy outlap here and trying to really work that temperature into the tires slowly and bring them online.
Paul Skip and Nick Terrell coming into the pits. And that offers a pretty interesting situation here, because they're going to be in these pits and probably... Okay, that was a pretty short stop for Skip there. I was wondering if this pit stop would take him a little bit longer. It could be the case that, we'd be approaching that like 49-minute mark before they got out, just so close to the halfway point. And if they're able to do some heavy fuel saving, potentially, even still in this situation, potentially they can get rid of that last stop. I don't know what kind of fuel saving they did here at the start of the race, but most drivers do less.
Yeah, I think it's easier to fuel save when you kind of have a draft train going, because it can help you really pull the car into the corners. You can let up, you can coast behind the car in front of you, and let the draft kind of carry you into the corner a little bit easier. But when you're all on your own and isolated, it's a little harder to really engage that heavy fuel saving. So it'll be interesting to see how much they did, and if they can keep it to a one-stopper, if they're going to have to slash and dash here at the end.
Yeah, I think the one benefit that you really do get from being able to fuel save when you're alone is just that maybe you don't have that threat of like, okay, if I go, a few tenths slower, I'm not going to lose a position. And some of those positions early on in the race are so valuable to have. So that you see a lot of jockeying for those spots before things kind of start to naturally spread out.
Oh, absolutely. And in the train as well, you kind of try to lift in the same spot every lap, but you don't want to do anything unpredictable and accidentally get the guy behind you to just kind of come up into your rear bumper there by accident. So a little easier, a little more difficult depending on the situation.
Travis Rowe into the pits for the GT3. So another driver, he'll be coming out of the pits after the 50-minute mark. We just hit now, but the entrance a little bit early. So we saw easy one-stop strategies in the last few races, especially like Okayama, which was so tight, probably the tightest track we have on the calendar a couple weeks ago. Really easy for drivers to stretch it. I think we saw Chris Newby stretch it as far as 55 minutes, or even more than that. I think maybe over an hour, but I don't think we're going to get that kind of fuel efficiency here at this track because of that long straight.
It managed to make it just past the halfway mark, it looks like, so I think they can keep this to a one-stopper. Travis Rowe is the first of the top 10 to come in. But Jack Lucas now in behind him on the next lap.
Yeah,
Chris Stacker. So they look like they're lining their times up pretty well. Maybe a little extra fuel saving for Chris Stacker and Jack Lucas there. Or maybe Travis Rowe tried to come in early and see if he could undercut the position in front of him. We'll see how they all file back out of the pits.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if he feels confident that he's making it to the end when he stopped, then that can be a very valuable tool to use, depending on what the traffic around him looked like. But it is tough to undercut with the tires, given that you have such a difficult kind of warm-up period on those new tires. Sometimes the overcut can be more effective.
Oh yeah, certainly the outlap, and even really your first lap after the outlap on new tires can be very tricky here. So,
on board here with James Rep, though, we see the trickiness of those old tires. It does not look like the cars that we saw going through Coca-Cola and 100R at the start of this race. It didn't look like he was doing anything on the wheel, but the car was just drifting and lazily pushing out on the spots that it was really gripping and sticking to the track earlier on.
Important tires, and the track is rubbering in well, so that's going to bring some more grip, but the track is also warming up quite a bit now, which is going to change the way that the grip characteristics work once again.
The current temperature on the track, 29 Celsius, which is about 85 degrees Fahrenheit. And so it's not the hottest track in the world, but it is hotter than when they started this race. and it typically is going to continue to get hotter. It's only 9:30 in that sim, so it's going to keep rising as we make our way to the end tonight. More pits from a couple of the guys up at the front of the field, James Foreman and Travis Bell. Ken Huber is our provisional leader for the race. Net leader still seems to be Chris Thacker, unless something shocking happened in the pit stops that we don't know about. It looked like a pretty standard pit stop for him, and he's only fallen back to 8th.
See how far Ken Huber, Paul Boyle, Tyler Langenberg, I wonder how far they're going to push this stint and what they have left in the fuel tank here. They can get another couple laps out of it. It might help shake up the standings here at the top a little bit since they'll have quicker pit stops.
Yeah, we've seen Ken Huber get some good wins this season from really strong pit strategy. Paul Boyle and Tyler Langenberg are both really expert fuel savers as well that we've seen them use to good effect before. Ken Huber coming into the pits here now. Paul Boyle coming into the pits as well. So let's see if Langenberg also joining this group, and it looks like he is. So this is maybe about as far as these cars can go, as a lot of the best fuel savers in this field are now coming in for their stop.
Looks like Aaron Claybaugh is staying out an additional lap, and Chris Craig behind him as well. So they're really pushing their stints far.
And you can hear a little bit of an early lift there for Claybaugh, but not much. I mean, I don't think that he's stressing too much going this extra lap. But takes the lead and leads a lap for that GT3 class with Christopher Craig right behind him. Certainly, I mean, he has to be coming in this lap. It seems like everybody else has not been able to stretch it this far, so I'd imagine that's what we see here, both these guys coming into pits. But I'm interested to see how this pays off for their strategy, being able to go just this little bit extra. And them being able to go extra potentially also means that they need less fuel for the rest of the race, too.
Yeah, if they can take a bit less fuel, that could save them a pretty substantial amount of time in the pit, so it might jostle the position up when it all nets out here and everyone resettles back into their second stint. Looks like Jesse Coffey also stayed out the extra lap here.
Yeah, and Langenberg just passed him there. So I wonder if Coffey doing a little bit more fuel saving, or I guess probably just because, I mean, the new tires are not that fast, but from some of the way that some of the drivers we've seen, it looks like they're probably feeling a little bit happier on the brand new tires than these 50 plus minute old ones.
Yeah, Langenberg's actually on his outlap, so Jesse Coffey had passed him while he was on his way out of the pits, and he really hustled to take that position back right away. Hopefully he's not pushing those tires too hard here just to stay in front.
Yeah, not the kind of situation you like to be in where you come out of the pits and you're immediately having to battle. You like to try to get them to temperature and in their right window at your own pace, but no such possible opportunity for Langenberg, as you saw a little bit of a wiggle there through the peak of nets. And yeah, Claybaugh Craig coming into the pits a little bit ago and will be coming out here. We'll see what positions they find themselves in here.
Yeah, it looks like Coffey's going to follow them into the pits this lap too. They managed to push those really far. They got 34 laps out of their first stint.
Yeah, and I didn't see really a ton of fuel saving by Jesse Coffey. He stuck with Langenberg there that whole time. So really good strategy and planning for Coffey there. Again, our GT3B class leader. But with James Foreman's performance so far in this race, if the race were to end as it is, he would, I think, fall back to second at least, because Nathan Westland not here.
Ken Huber with his pit strategy, again, he looks like he's made up that 5 or so seconds Chris Thacker had on him going into the pits, and he is now in front of Chris Thacker, so I think he is our new net leader.
Yeah, you are absolutely correct. They've made their pit stops, and with a shocking result, Chris Thacker is behind Ken Huber, was ahead dominantly. Let's see what their pit times were. Amount of time spent in their box now shown on the left there. Ken Huber, a good 4 seconds less time spent in the box, and that not only 4 seconds less, but less than everybody else in the entire field. Fastest pit stop in the whole crowd.
I wonder if he's really trying to stretch the fuel. He figured he'd take less and manage it from there because that is a lot of time to make up in the pits.
Another interesting thing to look at up there, it's kind of the opposite situation, is Jay Smart decided to take his splash and dash as the first stop. So his stop was 20 seconds shorter than that of competitor Paul Skip. If you take 20 seconds away, Paul Skip is below 3 seconds. That gap was 5 or 6 seconds, and that is now, the virtual gap has now reduced.
Something that's really underappreciated here is exactly how you get in and out of the pits. It's just a little bit too early on the brakes. You scrub too much speed too quickly. You can end up really losing a lot of time on your way in or coming out. You're kind of coming in really narrow to Daichi there, and it can be really tricky to get the brakes right, especially on new tires. So they can all cost you a lot of time, kind of either side of the pit stop as well.
Couple incidents all happening right at the same time. We saw Aaron Claybaugh with the crash there, a spin by Greg Holland, and then another unaffiliated incident with that of Tony Watson at the exact same time elsewhere on the track through Coca-Cola. Three incidents for drivers on some newish tires. Maybe not a shocker to see, but yeah, you're totally right about the time spent there in the pit lane. So if you look at that as well, we saw a good, let's get the calculation there again. Pit time was a difference of short of 4 seconds between Huber and Thacker as far as in the actual box, and then the total pit lane time was a little bit more than 4 seconds. So he not only saved some time, or he saved a lot of his time in the actual pit box, but he saved a lot of time in the pit lane as well.
Yeah, he's really good at that. He at Sebring earlier this year, he picked up almost 8 seconds on me. I hadn't practiced my pit entries, and I absolutely blew my entry, probably to the tune of about 5 seconds. It was brutal. And I had a pretty good gap on him, and he came back. He just got in the lead, and he was unshakable once he's there. He's so consistent. Looks like he's done the same thing again here. See if Chris can put him under pressure here.
He's definitely trying his best here. Got him quite close. Has not tried to make any moves yet, but filling up the mirrors of Ken Huber's Lamborghini there with that Audi, and trying to maybe poke and prod, trying to plan a spot to make the move. I mean, that's the nice thing about being in second place, is that's the only move you got to think about. The only move you got to try to make is that move for the lead.
They've got a pretty good gap to everyone behind them too, so they don't have to worry about too much coming up. At least in the short term, they don't have to worry about too much behind them. If they get stuck battling, I think we could see Paul Boyal and Tyler Langenberg really close that gap quickly, though. They have good pace.
Yeah, both those cars behind on track are not for positions. James Rep and Leonardo Elijah, who are fighting for 18th and 19th for their position, but they are one lap down. That next car for position is 3 cars back there, that green runaway Reptar car that Paul Boyle's running, and he's got a 7-second gap currently to Chris Thacker. Ken Huber again defending the far inside. We were just talking about this earlier in the race, that the inside is the only surefire way to really make a move happen into turn 1, and he is keen to defend that.
See, Chris Thacker kind of fainted after Ken comes back to the line to get into this braking zone, but I don't think he's quite close enough to make that switch down into the inside there yet. See if he can run him closer in a couple of laps.
Yeah, you wonder how much of it was some mind games and how much of it is him kind of thinking for a second that was a possible move, because I imagine he didn't expect him to kind of, I mean, Ken Huber rejoined that racing line pretty early, gave Thacker the opportunity to make that happen if he really wanted, but not taking the bait there at least.
Yeah, at the moment, I think he's probably pretty happy just to sit in second and turn in the laps. And as we get a little closer to the end of the race, the switch will flip and they'll start the battle a bit more.
Gap fell back a little bit as they made their way through this, well, actually both sectors. About a couple tenths slower in each sector, but it looks like he's catching up here at the end, which most important sector to do, because you got to be close down that long straight to make anything happen. But as long as Ken Huber continues to aggressively defend that inside, it's going to be difficult for Chris Thacker to really make a game plan.
Phoenix and Panasonic are probably the two most difficult corners on this track, but they're also the most important. In particular, Panasonic, that corner exit absolutely makes or breaks your unbelievably long straightaway. So if you can get a good exit off of there, you can race with just about anybody on this track.
Traffic making their way through and not interrupting this battle as they get into the braking zone. Battle continues to stay close, but nothing doing at this point. You also see further back, Zach Nurnberger is catching up to Aaron Claybaugh here. This would put him into the top 10. He's already up 10 spots on the race. This would put him up in 11th and into that 10th spot, which would be a podium for that GT3B class as well.
He's having a great race. He's done a really good job of pushing his way through the field here.
Oh, and look at that car for Claybaugh. So Claybaugh, major damage, and I doubt it's going to be that long until Nurnberger gets the move made, because that front bumper is, as long as that's what's actually on this car, it's pretty ruined.
I'm not sure the front bumper is even there anymore.
Yeah.
What happened to cause that?
Yeah, oh, maybe this isn't here. This happened. Oh yeah, this is the one. Oh yeah, we saw the bumper come off. Yes, this was the spinning nets
Yes.
a few laps ago. Car was in pristine condition, and then he tries to rejoin with, I think that's Keith Roycroft making his way through, and yeah, the actual bumper is entirely gone. You are correct on that.
Maybe he's getting a little extra front aero for sectors 2 and 3 out of it, so he wants to stay out there.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's faster there in Sector 1. Didn't look really any slower here in Sector 2, but it's down that long straight where we saw Nurnberger catch up a good 3 or 4 tenths. And not only that, but I mean, he's in the BMW versus that Porsche as well, so he was already going to have that natural advantage, but a good 6 and 7 tenths faster there in Sector 2. So the damage may look bad, but he's able to still wheel it around here pretty well.
Making it work for him.
As we follow these couple battles, as we will take a few-minute break, be right back with you for the brunt of the action coming here to the end. So back in just a couple minutes. right, we're back to the action here. Chris Thacker still trying to chase down Ken Huber, and we have Derek in the booth again here for the ending of this race. So welcome to the booth here, Derek.
Yep, finally made it. I have been here for a minute, but they've been so distracted by all of the exciting racing for about the last 20 minutes, and I've been watching it, and it's been quite a show. I did miss a little bit, but I have seen it, and we are here for the end of the race, and we are still yet to see more action.
Had an incident while we were out as well for Christopher Craig. You can see as he makes his way into the hairpin, just the car going out behind him.
It's a little too much rotation there, and it just, once it comes around, it doesn't come back. It's so tricky.
And what's also been tricky here, Chris Thacker trying to get that first place position. I mean, I don't think he's made any really strong moves in earnest, but you can tell he's really wheeling that car back there, and the gap has been about the same for the last 6 laps here. 4 laps ago, he did bring it down just under half a second at the line, but for the most part, it's kind of stayed the same. He's not falling back, so he clearly has the pace, but just not quite enough to make an attempt so far.
Yeah, well, whenever he tries to do it, he's got down into Daichi, and we've seen a couple cool overtakes into nets so far. I wonder if that might be a spot to try and put some pressure on as well.
That much is true. I'm currently looking at Jesse Coffey, who is our current leader for the B class of the GT3 series, and he's got a little bit of a gap on him, but just behind him is Kevin Bergquist looking for position, and he's not necessarily in the run for the championship. For him, he's about P5 as far as that is concerned, but he's trying to make his way up and take any position he can. So we look at Jesse Coffey, and the gap looks big, but anything can happen in the closing moments, and Kevin Bergquist might be able to get a few points towards the championship, take that lead away from him, or at least make it a little tougher to try and get that win.
We've seen it happen a few times here now, where it looks like there's a 3, 4, 5 second gap between the cars, and then just a simple, easy to do mistake really kind of glues everyone back together. So
yes,
was probably waiting to take advantage of any mistake he can from Jesse Coffey right now.
We are looking at 15 minutes left in the official series, 14 minutes and 40 seconds to be exact. So it's crunch time. We only got a few laps left. Is there anybody left to pit, or is they all got their splash and dashes and done, and we are ready to set and go? Is that what's up?
I mean, we did see some GT3s. The GTPs. Only one driver's completed their pit regiment so far. That's Jay Smart, who we just saw come in just a couple laps ago.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, on lap 48. But everyone else still needs to make a splash. GT3s, we did see some guys come in a little early, but given how late we saw some of them go, I think that maybe it was just a strategy call. We saw, like, Jeff McDonald is the primary driver who we saw pit pretty early, and may be able to make it in that one stop. We just don't know at this point.
He's going to definitely try and give it his all, because if he has to go back into the pits, that's going to be a long time. It takes 25 to 30 seconds just to make your way through, not to mention the gas you're going to take in these 50% cars. Or is it 50 or is it 85? 85% cars. That's a lot. You're not going to need to take all that, but it's still going to take a little bit of time to take a few bits of gas. So that's going to cut in, and if you can make that one stop happen, that's really going to impact positively for your race.
I think everybody probably is on schedule to do that. We saw the latest drivers come in around the 55-ish minute mark. I just am really interested to see, with a couple of the GTPs that stretched that first stint to nearly making it to that 50-minute mark. I think Paul Skip and Nick Paletti specifically were the two guys that they pit there at the 49-minute mark. And if they're really heavy on fuel conservation here in the second stint, I wonder if it's possible for them to make it to the end. That is definitely a big question. The plan for every race, I think, so far for the GTPs has been a two-stopper, so it would be an interesting one.
Well, if you say Jay Smart is the only one who has already taken tires, that's looking great for him.
Looks like Zach Nuremberger just
Or not
overtook
tires, but
Clay
gas.
as well. Put Zach Nuremberger into 10th place.
Yeah.
He's gonna love that. He's gonna love that.
Watch that replay again. Remember diving down the inside just a little bit out of control for Aaron Claybaugh as they made their way through Dunlop. He's doing a great job to really wheel around that damaged car because it doesn't look too hot, but he's really keeping up some commendable pace, but losing that position in the end. Had a lot of fight for that one, and a lot of fight up at the front still. Chris Thacker, 6/10, 7/10,
Yeah.
around there.
They are one of our integral fights right now.
Right now, it's also been about as far as it has been since the battle started, as they came out of the pits, and Huber just had that massively shorter pit stop. This is about as just disparate as it's been between the two drivers, and Chris Thacker can't really afford for that momentum to keep swinging that direction.
He really is an assassin in the pits. I think you've kind of got him. You've got a good gap on him, and then you come out of the pits, and all of a sudden you're behind him.
And this is a great place to take advantage in the pits as well. Oh, there he goes. Uh-oh moment for Tony Watson. Big uh-oh. Looks like he lost his front bumper. That's going to really hurt him. Even in these closing laps, we've got exactly 10 minutes and 45 seconds left until the white flag drops. So that's a considerable amount of time, even though it is the closing, and he is really going to hate getting back on track and having no front end downforce.
Yeah, there in that Coca-Cola corner, we've seen incidents early in the stints with the cold tires, and then we've seen it as the tires start to get worn. It doesn't seem to be a problem area for the cars when they're in their peak, but now as they're starting to deal with some tire wear again, it's looking to be a problem.
That little edge on the curb can really unsettle you if you hit it wrong, and it looked like he just kind of caught it at the wrong angle there.
Oh yes, and I don't know if y'all have ever mentioned, I missed the first half of this stream, but those yellow sausage curbs, those will incur so much damage as well as what sending you off, and any kind of grip you have, now you're in the air. Those things are nasty, so if anybody touches them, boom, they're gone.
We've witnessed it. Yeah, it's happened to a couple cars already in this race.
Yeah, so far it's been mostly avoided, but there have been a couple instances and a couple of cars taking off like airplanes there.
I'll tell you, I did some practice here with Greg Holland, Rick Hughes, and Travis Bell leading up to this race, and that is one thing we found, is that those sausage curbs, they will actually incur some damage. So if you're full force on them, like, you're gonna lose downforce, you're gonna lose a bumper, who knows. So looks like they've been learning from that, and from what I've seen since I've joined, no one has touched them, so they've all figured it out.
Yeah, in my practice as well, I hit one and basically put the car perpendicular. It was like a monster truck trying to do a backflip.
Oh yeah, Gravedigger would be proud.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would imagine most drivers have made that mistake already in practice and are keen to avoid it. As the only that we saw it a couple times early in this race due to some crowding with some heavy traffic between the GT3s, all vying for positions, but no one has just drifted out there accidentally. I think everyone's definitely aware of the dangers of that corner. As Travis Bell.
Chris Thacker just got spun around here, I think.
Oh no!
Oh, Chris Thacker in the pits.
Let's see what happens.
Looks like he did a toe. Also, Tyler Langenberg doing his best to catch up.
Well, we can see him. He's not. He's
oh wait,
here on
there
the
he
screen.
goes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, never mind. And there he goes, wide around.
I don't know what this would be for. I don't think that he has any visual damage that I can see on the car. But we did have this incident for Travis Bell right at the same time, making his way through Dunlop, getting a little unsettled, just like we saw Aaron Claybaugh.
Maybe too much Diablo sauce in that Taco Bell car. He is driving the Porsche, and as we know, we have seen him primarily drive the Mercedes, and maybe it was a little too spicy. Yo quiero, RIP to that car for Travis Bell. Looking at Jeff McDonald, he's trying to hold pace in 11th, catching up to Tyler Langenberg in 10th. He's really putting the pressure on. We've only got about 7.5 minutes left in this race, and he's doing everything he can to catch up and not make a misstep, because it's going to count for the points.
Yeah, I don't have the slightest clue of why we lost Chris Thacker in that race there. I mean, he didn't seem to have any damage. He pit at a normal time, so I would be surprised if he was going to be short on fuel. But I mean, that's really the only thing I can even think that happened, because he didn't come into the pit stop for a very short time. He may have been putting a little bit of fuel in that car. I have no idea.
What do you think, Eric? Do you think it was maybe an internet glitch, or do you think it was driver error?
So the incident that turned him around, it looked like he just got a little love tap. There's some speed differential there through nets. It looked like just coming together, but I didn't see that much in terms of visible damage. It didn't look like the car would be undrivable. The damage was all kind of on the rear bumper there.
I just wonder if maybe it put him over an incident limit, and he had a drive through and then just wasn't thinking about it and stopped in his pit box. I just can't even think about what could have been the cause there.
We've had minimal races where, I mean, maybe one or two that have hit that penalty and had to do the drive through. It couldn't be more than 2 or 3, so I don't think that might be it. It is Fuji though, so.
Danger up getting that spot on Dan Barnett, as Dan Barnett losing control there in the middle of the hairpin. Let's see a replay of this incident that he had. So you see Barnett there already losing it at the start. We're seeing those Porsches really start to snap and lose some control here on these old tires. A lot of drivers in that car.
Speaking of Porsches, I've seen Travis Bell get loose. He is trying his best to catch up to Jesse Coffey for position of P18. They only got a few minutes left, and he's trying to savor any lap and time that he can.
He's really charging forward now. He's reduced that gap to 1 second, it looks like.
He's getting there. He is really pushing hard. It's got Greg Holland in the way. Greg's really doing his best to do a clean race. I know he's had a little incident in the past. Just when I signed on, I heard y'all talking about him getting a little loosey-goosey, but hopefully he can secure at least some points today.
Jeff McDonald making the move into third place, into the podium spots. There we go. Jeff McDonald, I pointed him out as being strong at this track before, and he's now up 5 from already a strong qualifying position of 8th place, now into 3rd overall. But Tyler Langenberg is still close behind him, trying to get him back here as he had to back off of him there in 100R.
And that was a beautiful view from in car, looking at him make that happen and come out of it and stick it. Gorgeous, you know?
Take a look at that again.
On the brakes.
Yeah, Tyler Langenberg currently in P4 for his class, trying to hold on to it, but, you know, we're still racing. I'll tell you that much. We got about 4 minutes to go. As of right now, 4 minutes left before that white flag drops. So we're still looking at people pushing and really getting it. I mean, this is a tight track, a lot of chicanes, a lot of tight movements. LMP is going slow. I think that's a big shakeup for them. Yeah, it's amazing that they've been able to hold it together as well as they have. So everyone's getting hot for the last few laps. Might see a few shakeups.
The other thing we're still waiting on is to see if Skip and Paletti here need to make a stop. We are at 6 minutes to go and 9 seconds, and still time. I mean, you think that they would have made their splash and dash at this point if they had to make it. So it seems like maybe Paul Skip and Nick Paletti banking on being able to use that one-stop potential strategy and just doing a lot of fuel saving here at the end of this race.
We looking like we might go the extra lap. That could definitely play into their decision to stay out as well. If it looks like it's going to be kind of nailed on to that 1 lap less than the prediction.
I think you're right on that. Absolutely. I mean, you look at 18.27 seconds gap between Paul and Nicholas. So if Paul did need to lap or need to pit because of he's running out of gas, that's not enough gap to stay out in front if Nicholas doesn't have to pit. So I think he might risk it for the biscuit. Hopefully they did their management, and we'll see.
And Jay Smart was the leader the majority of this race, and he has made that second stop that the other drivers have not. And a spin there by Jeff McDonald right in the background.
Ooh.
Or Paul Boyle. Paul Boyle, second place for the GT3s.
Wow. He's not going to be happy about that one.
Looks like he recovered it to stay out in front of Jeff McDonald for now.
He's going to have a tough try at it, though. Eric, what do you really think about the Paul versus Nicholas scenario, and also Jay Smart, whose tires are much newer? Obviously, there's a 12-second gap. If there was anybody to make a mistake, do you think Jay has potential to secure a P2? Maybe.
I think
that's a lot of ground to make up in just a couple of laps remaining here. It would be really impressive if he can do it. Or, depending on the fuel management, if Nick and or Paul has to come in and just take on enough for one lap, which would be really unfortunate for them, I think Jay is close enough that he could make his way back into first place even. So really depends on fuel strategy for the guys in front of him.
Yeah, I don't think Jay has. I think Jay has older tires than Skip and Paletti. Jay was the first of the three to pit, but made a splash and dash, or maybe he did, because he did take that quick stop at the start. I don't know if he took. I assume maybe he took tires in the last stop. I don't actually know at this point now.
Well, I'll tell you, if Jay can make it work, if they do have to get a little splash and dash, even though his tires are older, he's probably been babying him a little bit.
Curse. This is Jay Smart trying to pick his way through some traffic, and Leonardo Elijah and him getting connected in Daiichi.
Oh,
well, he was hunting. He'll get back on track. I don't think he will lose position, as he has a big gap, 11.2 seconds, and decreasing between him and John or Nick Terrell. So he'll be fine. Unfortunately, he won't be able to make advantage on any splash and dash, as we have 1 minute and 10 seconds left in race.
3 minutes. Yeah, 3 minutes in the race. I think your counter's kind of the pace lap and all that, the timer of the event.
Okay, yeah, I'm just reading off of my iRacing event itself.
Yeah, that would include
the lap time,
the pace
1:30.
So we have 2.5 minutes right now.
This much is true. This much is true. So we got about 2 laps before we hit white flag. Yeah. Ken Heber's going to be happy about that. He's got a 15-second gap on Paul Bull. He'll be ready to close it out, as we have seen him do many times. Tyler Langenberger, less than a second from Jeff McDonald, still trying to put her in. On board with Kevin Berquist, still trying to do anything he can. I don't know if he's going to make it happen. He's got Greg Holland in front of him, who's not going to contest, but still, I think they're going to be secured in their positions.
Yeah, a little bit
Eric
of damage.
Clayball and Chris Thacker are very close to each other now as well. That could be a good race for position for P9 here right at the end as well.
Not for their own class, but for overall position itself, they are a 10th between them. And here they go. Wow, he's taking the advantage. Bing bong, look at him go. He's going inside. He's taking the risks. That's racing, y'all. That's racing.
I am interested to see here. It looks like Paul Skip is going to get a very friendly white flag, as we still have over a minute remaining, but he's getting close to the end of this lap. So he should get a white flag with 40 or 50 seconds to go. So it should be going to plan. And yeah, I mean, Skip and Paletti haven't come in, so they've made this happen on a one stop, provided they make it to the end here. And that has been the key to their success in what seemed like a dominant J Smart victory.
Dan Barnett taking the last 2 laps. He is under point. He's 0.2 away from Tony Watson. Now's the time to make the move. Nick Terrell coming up behind him in the GTP, so that might shake them up. He's trying everything he can. 2/10. He's still got a couple laps as they are approaching the white flag. Nick Terrell goes around. And look at that. Daniel Barnett goes wide, going in, nut to butt. Tony Watson trying to go inside, get the momentum, but looks like Tony is not giving Daniel any bit of momentum. He's saying, I'm here to stay. I got a little front end damage, but you ain't coming by me.
Yeah, we saw that damage happen in Coca-Cola incident that Tony Watson had a few laps ago. Decided not to come into the pits for a repair and to just tough it out to the end of this race. So desperately trying to defend this position to the end, but it's going to be very difficult. Barnett thinking about a move, not making anything happen there. Paul Skip is now making his way into the final sector of this race as the leader for so long just seemed to be out of it with how Jay Smart was doing, but really a lot of it must have come down to fuel saving and making sure that he was planning for the end of this race. So making this race happen on a one-stopper, a fantastic strategy for Paul Skip, who started in second place. He has multiple wins on the season, and today would be win number 4 of 6 if he just makes it to the finish line here.
Oh,
Paul Skip coming to the end, and
Kevin Bergquist.
Paul Skip comes across as the winner of the Fuji Round 6 Endurance for Amateurs. What a win for him there.
Congratulations to him. But while that is happening, Kevin Bergquist is pushing hard on Greg Holland for position. Greg's not going to let it happen for P20. But my goodness, what racing we have, even after the leader has crossed the line. They are still getting after it. Eric, do you see any other fights going on quite like this? Because I don't see any other fights going on quite like this. They're crossing the line about now.
Yeah, they were battling all through the third sector. It looks like Greg Holland's going to hold on to the position here.
And Ken
He's
Huber
losing a lot of frontline speed, but he just about does it.
Ken Huber crosses the line as the victor for yet another time in GT3. Seemed like he was out of it as well, and with a fantastic pit strategy yet again gets win 5 of 6 on the season. Also crossing the line coming up soon here is James Foreman taking the final corner and has the win for the GT3Bs with Jack Lucas just 4 seconds behind him. A great win for James Foreman's second win on the season for the GT3B class out of 4 unique winners.
And, Ken Huber is really happy about that. He is running away with it right now. Can anybody stop this man from securing it? I mean, I think we're going to have to start calculating the end of the season to see where he might secure it. Kind of like how we talk about Max Verstappen. I mean, I don't want to go ahead and say it right now. We're still pretty early into the season, but he is showing out. He's gotten multiple poles, won most every single race. Good gracious, Ken Huber. Can he be stopped?
Chris Thacker nearly had the run to make that happen on Zach Nuremberger there, who Nuremberger finishes this race climbing 13 positions to 8th overall. Started in 21st, finishing in 8th. A wonderful race for Zach Nuremberger tonight. So let's pull up our official results for tonight's race.
Zach Nuremberger was the highest mover. He took 13 positions. Next highest behind him looks like it would be Tony Watson with 9. Great drives from both of them navigating through the GTD field there.
For our race results, race winner Paul Skip by 20 seconds ahead of Nick Paletti, and Jay Smart with the unfortunate off strategy coming in 3rd place after leading a majority of the race. Nick Terrell, your 4th place finisher, and was your leader coming into this race. I think Paul Skip will likely reclaim that with a 1-point gap between them. And John Kelly and Ryan Jeevan round out that GTB field. Looking at our GT3 class, winner Ken Huber overall, a 15-second advantage over Paul Boyle with his best finish on the season. I believe also first podium. Yes, first podium of the season for Paul Boyle. First podium for Jeff McDonald as well. Both guys with good races here today. Tyler Langenberg rounding out the top 4. James Foreman comes across as the victor for GT3B with Jack Lucas earning his first podium. Now the eighth unique driver making to the podium for GT3B this season. Christopher Craig, Zach Nuremberger also getting his first podium. This has been a fantastic race for a lot of guys here with their best race tonight.
Oh, yeah.
Chris Thacker and Aaron Claybaum rounding out the top 10. Philip Rainieri, Travis Bell, and Jesse Coffey. Greg Holland, Kevin Berquist, and James Repp. Tony Watson, Dan Barnett, Leonardo Elijah, and Roger Schenk capping the 20. And then lastly, Keith Roycroft, Travis Rowe, Adrian Garcia, Rick Hughes, Keith Williams, and Richard Curry, all drivers not finishing the race.
All right. I really want to talk to Paul Skip right now, who is our overall winner in the GTP class and the overall. Man, you've been doing great this season, and this is probably one of the more difficult races that we're going to have here for your class here, and you still managed to pull a 20-second lead out. How difficult was this? How much prep did you do here? Have you even raced here before? Did you have to buy the track just to do this week?
No, actually, I believe I won back when LMP2 was a thing, so it's not a new track to me. I had a feeling I was going to be able to pull out the one stop. And when Jay out qualified me, I tried to run him down a little bit, thinking he would just, run his gas out early and force him to stop early. He did stop about a lap early. I was like, well, that strategy's out the window. And then after I got done with my pit stop, he was like 23 seconds ahead of me, like the lap after. I'm like, how the hell did that happen?
Oh, yeah, exactly. Hey, so Eric, as we were talking, how do you think Paul's pit strategy worked out? I know we were all waiting in the last few laps. Let me hear what you have to say about what you think went on in his head as far as pit strategy.
Yeah, Jay looked like he had a really good lead built up there, but he had to stop a second time. When you came out after your first stint, were you thinking maybe you'll just one stop it and try and catch him if he has to go back in?
No, I didn't think he was gonna have to go back. That's why the 23-second thing was so baffling to me. Because when I pulled into the pits on the stop, I was literally like sputtering to my pit stall.
We knew you were probably right at the edge. So, I mean, you made the right call, but it was a risky maneuver. Even though you had the gap, you could have pitted and did a little splash and dash if you needed to. But, you made it work. You knew you had the gap. You probably half throttling for the last 5 laps, I imagine.
Well, it wasn't because I was trying to save gas. It was just because I was trying to keep the rear tires in line there at the end. It got real hot.
This much is true. We're at Fuji International right now, and it's a tight little track, so those tires are screaming. Let's move on and talk to our GTD Class A winner, Ken Huber, with the win. Once again, man, you are wiping the field, man. How are you creating such success, even in a tight little track like Fuji?
I don't know. Actually, to be honest with you, I wasn't expecting this one tonight. I got in there. There's a lot of fast guys. Chris got on the pole, and I could not keep up. But I lost, I don't know, 5-6 seconds over the course of the run, and I had Paul Boyle chasing me, and I just felt like I didn't have the car tonight. So I was like, oh, hopefully I can get a top 3 out of this. And next thing I know, I'm in the lead and battling for a win. So, hey, you know what? I guess that's the way it works out. But it really sucks for Chris. I think this was his first time in the league. Apparently he had some kind of incident out there on the track with one of the GTPs. So it sucks for him. But, hats off to him, man. He put up a heck of a good race, and I had a lot of fun.
I'm sure you absolutely did. So this is really putting you massively ahead in the points. I mean, as I'm looking as of last race, you are 234 championship points against Eric Bellata, who is currently on voice right now with 216, and you're going to make that gap happen. So like you're looking pretty good for the championship already. We got a lot of weeks to go.
It's a lot of weeks to go, and there's quite a few drop weeks, so I'm not counting my chickens just yet.
Yeah, I would say.
And these guys, I was talking to Paul and Paul and about Chris, and these guys are going to be working really hard. So you can expect those two guys to probably be running up front a lot of the season too.
Yeah. So
And
Eric,
what and
what are you gonna do about that, huh?
I'm going to have hip surgery and watch the rest of the season and have some fun in the booth with
oh no, I thought
you
you
and
had
Zach.
that delayed.
Yeah, well, it's coming soon.
Well, hey
Fortunately.
man, it was a blast racing with you. You know, I wish you the best on the surgery, man. You're one heck of a competitor, man. And I was wondering where you were tonight. I had no idea you were in the broadcast booth. So cool. I'm glad you're up there with Zach and Dick. And yeah, look forward to hearing your calling races.
Yeah,
Yes,
Ken, that was a heck
indeed.
of a race, man. Your pit strategy. I don't know how you managed. You took 8 seconds out of Chris in the pits there. That was incredible. We didn't. You did it to me at Sebring too. It's like, oh, look, I have a little bit of a gap, and then you come out of the pits and you're like staring at your rear bumper. It's like, how? Really great job, man.
Massively impressive.
It's NASCAR skills right there. It's all the years of racing NASCAR, I guess.
There you go.
Indeed. All right. Next, I would really like to talk to James Foreman, who was trailing Jesse Coffey in the championship points for P2, and he made his way around Jesse Coffey tonight. I don't know where the championship points lie just yet, but I know it's tightening the gap, and I'm sure you were quite happy about that, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
So
That
how
was
did it, how was it tonight? Like, yeah, like obviously it went well, but like, was there much attrition? Like, how was it with dealing with the slow LMPs around the turns and whatnot? How was it?
oh, it was actually a pretty stressful race out there tonight. When you if you push too hard, you heated up your tires, and then it was hard to get a lot of understeer in the corners. So you're trying to pace yourself throughout the race, and I was keeping an eye on who's behind me, who's in front of me, trying to maintain a pace and not push too hard. So, and also it's an easy track to make a mistake on. So if you push too hard, you can slide out pretty easy on that track. So I was focusing on being steady, consistent, and trying not to crash.
That is fair point. Well, you made it happen tonight. This is a really tight track, one of the tighter tracks we're gonna do. So just finishing the race itself is that's an accomplishment on its own. And come out on top and make position in the championship points, that's quite an achievement. So congratulations on that.
Well, thank you.
I was wondering.
All right.
I did have a quick question for you. The early on in the race, you had a great qualifying performance, qualified quite high in the field, and for a good that first stint, I think. And I know like all the positions matter for points, but you were a good 5 positions, I think, ahead of the next B class driver. Were you aware of and like kind of keep an eye on Jack Lucas starting to? Because I think you guys finished right next to each other at the end. Come the checkered flag.
No, I didn't see him towards the end of the race come up on my relative, so I didn't know how far back he was until towards the end. I saw him creeping up a bit, and I was like, "Oh man, he's getting pretty close. I better not make a mistake towards the end of the race and not let him pass me."
Absolutely, man. I mean, you got to make every position count.
Definitely, it's been a tight championship this season, and there's a lot of good competition out there as well. So it's making me be on my A game and practice during the week to try to do my best throughout the races.
Well, you've done a great job of it tonight. Take in that champagne on your championship points you have gained, approaching Jesse Coffey for the top position of GTD B class. Now I'm so excited to talk to my friend Jeff McDonald. Jeff McDonald.
Uh-oh, am I supposed to be in here?
Yes. Your battle at the end of the race with Burnquist was enthralling. What was going through your head trying to make that position count?
Was it Berquist or was
Tyler
it
Langenberg.
Tyler? Yeah.
Oh, that was Langenberg.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry. There was multiple battles going on, and I guess I got confused. But yes, Langenberg. What was going through your head in that moment? Few
Well,
laps to go.
it was kind of funny because I was behind him and who was it? There were three guys ahead of me in early in the before the pit stop, and we were running four in a row, and we were all just it was like a draft train, and so I'm like trying. I got by one of them, and then I got by the second guy, and I was behind Tyler, and I'm chasing him, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'll pit early because I got the pit open or pit so I could pit and not run out of fuel. And so I went two more laps and I pitted early, thinking maybe I can get by him if I get some fresh tires while he's still on the track. And he came out a second further ahead of me. So I ran behind him for a while, and I'm like, man, I had to take a little easy on fuel because I had to keep watching. It was saying I needed a little more, and then it was saying I didn't, and then I did, and I didn't. So I was saving a little and pushing a little. And I don't know if he had to save a little near the end because I kind of caught him the last second and a half or so when I finally got up to him. And then when I got by him, he kind of dropped back like a second, and we had a little bit of a race there. But I wasn't sure if he finally just decided he couldn't go anymore without saving or not. But yeah, man, it was tough, and he was driving great. And I don't know how the Porsche matches up to that GT, but that car, the Porsche, was fast all night. For the first time in a long time, I was able to suck up on somebody in the draft. Usually you just sit behind them and you can't catch them, even if you're two car lengths behind them. But tonight, that car was good.
Absolutely. What do you think about that, Eric?
Yeah, so the Porsche really good coming out of the last corner there, right? So you get a really good hole shot off of everybody, and that exit is so critical. It looked like you were really nailing it, and like you said, usually the Porsche's not really the quickest in a straight line, but when you come off of there so quickly, it lets you just kind of sit in front or really catch up to somebody and get close enough to stay with them.
Yeah, I think I've been watching a lot of guys, and I think it's just because I go way up to the top, and you kind of got to watch out of your right side for that yellow curb on the inside, and then the yellow curbs in the distance, and then in between there where the inside curb stops where the green is, and then the grass starts. If you can get those three lined up, as soon as they line up, you can get full throttle and you're shooting off that corner like crazy. But if you don't get up high enough, you can't do it. You still got to wait too long.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
that's kind of been the secret, so to speak. But this car, I mean, I love the Porsche, but it's been questionable lately. I've been on the fence about driving the Audi, but this track and this car for me is probably my favorite in all of iRacing. I've always done really well here, but Ken Huber was a rocket ship tonight, and even
And
Paul Boyle was fast too. There was no way I was catching those guys. Paul had a little thing at the end. I was just talking to him about it and lost some time or something, but I would have never even got close to him if it wasn't for that.
man, you must be a glutton for punishment because this is not an easy track to grapple by any means, whether you're in GT3s or GTPs. So if this is your comfort track, man, I don't want to race you because you're gonna win.
Well, this for me, what seems to be the fastest is the smoother you get. It's not about jamming the gas anywhere. You're rolling off the throttle. You got to pay attention to it. I mean, even when I lift off the throttle in turn 4 after Coke, there when you're doing that sweeping right-hander, I don't just pop off the throttle. I roll off of it, and so
Okay.
the platform stays more stable. You know what
So
I mean?
you keep a little pressure on the back and on the outside with a little throttle, a little trail braking.
Yeah, I
Keep
would touch it
keep
just a
that.
little bit to get it to
Yeah.
rotate if I needed to, and try to keep it tight. You sweep out too far, you're just running a lot of extra distance, I think, and you're not really getting the benefit. And you're saving that the left front tire. So that tire gets hot, you ain't doing anything.
This much is true. Well, congratulations on your finish tonight. We are going to move on to our P2 of the GTD A class, Mr. Paul Boyle.
Well, thanks, guys. I'll let.
Sorry, Jeff, I cut you off. Sorry, Jeff.
No, that's all right. I
I
just
cut
wanted
you
to
off
say
before you're
thanks.
saying goodbye.
I just want to say thanks, and the broadcast has been awesome lately. You guys are doing such an amazing job. So, but we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thank you very much. This is the first time we've had 3 people, even if I was super late.
Yeah, I can't wait
So,
to hear it.
All right, then. Have a good night. Let's talk to Mr. Paul Boyle now. You are
Hello, guys.
P2. You just quite couldn't catch up to Ken, man. You've been having a little rough start to this season, but to see you up in P2 right now, it's giving me big energy right now. So I'm real stoked to see you up there. How was the race for you on this tight little track?
Thanks, man. Fiji's one of my strongest for a while whenever we've come here, so it's nice to get back into that rhythm. I this off season took the switch to jump to VR over the Christmas period, so that might have an explanation for some of the early troubles. However, it's nice to see that I'm finally starting to find my rhythm for the season, and hopefully it can continue.
Absolutely, man. I mean, you've been doing pretty solid, throughout the season. You've had like a little bit of minor incidents, but for the most part, you've had a solid showing. So, unfortunately, my iPad has gone to sleep where I've got my standings, and let's see.
My strong showing of a did not finish a top 20 and a top 20.
Well, look, you're P16 for overall, and let's see, 5, 6, 7, 8, P9 before this race for your class. So I think you've done well tonight.
Thank you very much, man.
Absolutely. What do you think looking forward to next week? We got at Mugello. Well, I guess, do we have a drop week next week?
We don't. Yeah, we no race next week, but the next race 2 weeks from now in Mugello.
Yeah, my girlfriend gets the honors for next week.
Yeah.
But Mugello in 2 weeks' time. No, it's a track that I haven't personally raced at actively before, so it'd be nice to put my skills to a brand new experience.
Yes, I think that's going to be the case for most all of our drivers. How about you, Eric? Have you've been racing at Mugello and on racing since you started at all? I have 0 time there, so who knows?
Yeah, not a single lap for me, but I'm really excited to see everyone out there and racing in a couple of weeks. And Paul, I can't wait to see more from you. You've been absolutely flying the last couple of weeks. We had
Oh,
a
yeah.
great battle last week. It's awesome to see you follow it up with a podium this week.
Thank you very much, Eric.
Yeah, I know Travis Bell wishes he was right up there behind you. As aren't y'all in the same team?
So myself, Aaron Claybore, Travis Bell, the GT3 runners for Doge Squad this season. Oh, and ignore me, Rick Hughes is in there too.
Unofficial for everybody for this league, but yes, that's y'all's team.
Correct. And then we've also got Nicholas Paletti running in the GTPs as well. It's nice to see him have a solid show today too.
Oh yeah, I know. I'm in a personal chat with Travis, Rick, and Greg Holland, and both Travis and Rick said they woke up feeling like absolute dog water this morning. So we were lucky to see Travis show up. I don't think we saw Rick show up to the race because he's super dog watered out, not feeling great. And we hope for his immediate return to health, as well as Travis, who did manage to show up to the race, even though his head was about to explode. So props to him for even showing up.
Yeah, it's been a dogfight out there today in both real life and in on the track tonight for some of our Doge Squad members. So lovely to see.
Indeed. Well, congratulations on your finish, and we hope to see more from you in the future at Mugello. And yes, indeed, let's talk to Nicholas Paletti right now. P2 behind Paul Skip. He got 20 seconds on you. I don't think anything was catching him. What do you think about that?
Yeah. I mean, he was a good second to half a second faster than me every lap. I think I got real lucky with Jay messing up his fuel. Because both of those guys, I mean, they were about half a second a lap faster than me, like the whole race. And yeah, they had really, really good pace. In the traffic, I could maybe catch up to them. I could run similar lap times through traffic to them, but once they got clean track, I just couldn't keep up with them.
Well, you're currently P3, or at least previously P3 in the championship standings, and you've come through with a P2, still behind Paul Skip. Nick Carroll fell behind, so there might be a little shakeup in some championship points. So well done to you tonight. Congratulations on that P2. How did you find little tight Fuji on here? I drove personally just to try it, the GTP in the BMW in a practice session, and man, I don't know how y'all did it.
I mean, yeah, it's honestly it's not that small of a track. There's a few, like the last sector just sucks. It's just bad in traffic. But I think that's probably where most of the incidents were happening between classes, and even in the classes themselves. There's a few corners there that are very inviting, and there's no real good way to get around. So that's the only part that's a little sketchy. The rest of it is pretty easy to pass traffic on. Pretty much everyone I think in the league has raced this track before. They've raced multi-class, so that also really helped out. I think this track has been known to cause some some chaos for us. So I'm
Absolutely.
glad we. It seemed like, at least from where I was at, there wasn't too much chaos coming out of that final corner. But you never know. Some people look like they're going to hold their line. Some people miss the apex when they're not, trying to, and invite someone to send it, and it just leads to those little taps, those little spins. But that's Fuji.
Eric, did you do any time here just leading up to this race? Just to get some practice in? Do you see what's up?
Yeah, I got to turn some laps in a few of the GT3 cars, and that third sector, just like Nick said, is brutal. It's track is really wide, but it's deceptive. You really have to position the car in the right spot at the right time, or it blows the whole sector for you. And trying to come off of that last corner is it really kind of makes or breaks both the lap you're on and your next lap. So it's really tricky, especially through traffic. I could imagine for you, Nick, trying to make your way through there and get a good line out onto the straightaway, so you don't just drop a position out of just being slow out of the corner. It was really tough.
Brutal. Absolutely brutal. It's a tight track. I will absolutely admit that, it is a difficult track, and I think everybody did way better than I think I ever could. So congratulations to everybody who has come in. I think there's one person here left in the waiting room who we'll just get a few chat in. Mr. John Kelly took P5 in the GTP class tonight. Mr. John Kelly, how you doing, buddy?
Hey boys, how are y'all doing?
Fantastic. Was this a shake-up night or what? Fuji is quite a track, and especially for these LMPs, how did you manage to make it to the end?
Well, it was pretty easy for me. I just I'd catch Nick a little bit there at the end, and I had a little brake pedal kind of issue early on where I was kind of not able to modulate the brake the way you need to in these GTP cars. So I had to kind of slack off a little bit and couldn't push the brakes anywhere. So, and I just tried to not hit any GT3 cars, which was an adventure in itself.
Oh, I can only imagine. There's a few really tight turns, tight chicanes, and also the elevation change. You got a few little blind bumps and whatnot. So, like, as fast as the GTPs go comparatively, like, you never know what's going to happen. You're going to have to stare at your relative. How much of that was happening for you? Like, how much of track versus watching your relative was happening, where you catch yourself like, oh shit, I have a you look at the track in 2 seconds,
Well, in reality, as far as the F3 box goes, you're really paying more attention to who it is in front of you, and not exactly how far ahead they are.
This much is true.
Yeah, because that part from the two big sweepers in the early part of the lap, we are so much faster than GT3s through there. And several times during the night, I had a GT3 car just basically weave from one side of the road to the other right, literally, I don't know how I didn't hit him. And in both of the corners, the the right hand sweeper going into the little hairpin, and then that next one that goes down to where the chicane is. It was, you just had to watch the whole time. The rest of
I
it
bet
was
that.
okay. I mean, we pretty much can outbreak them pretty easily into the really slow corners, and if not that, it's easy to late apex and get by that way. It's just, I was racing with Ryan Jeevan in the first part, and just trying to save fuel because I didn't actually do any calculations to know if we were going to have to save a little bit, not to have to make a splash. And
Turns out you will, indeed.
yeah, so I was able to save a lap of fuel. I think just lifting and coasting behind Ryan, and that harassed him enough into a bunch of mistakes. And he made the ultimate one on pit entry and got a penalty. So
All right. Well, it looks
after
like
that, it was boring. So I tried to give all the, anytime I came up on a GT3 battle, I just kind of sat and waited to the straightaway to get by him. So that was, I could have caught Nick if I'd have pushed it. But
well, it looks like you will enjoy some championship points tonight. So well done for you, John Kelly, and we hope to see you in 2 weeks' time at Mugello. I will hand it over to Eric Bellotta for closing statements before Zach finishes the stream with all of the closing stats.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, John. Yeah, this was a really great track, some really good racing. It was really interesting to watch how the GTPs navigated all that traffic, and not nearly as many people died on those anti-cuts as we were probably thinking would. So it was really good, clean racing all around.
I couldn't imagine. I thought we'd seen so much sausage curb interventions, and it really wasn't the case.
Yep, but the wonderful race that we saw here, and congratulations to all the winners we have. As aforementioned again, if you're here for the E4A, we will not be here next week. There's no race next week. Obviously, Valentine's Day on that Wednesday, so spend the time with your loved ones for the holiday, and we'll be back to racing at Mugello in 2 weeks. So see everyone there, and have